9. He says, well, good teacher, who then is my neighbor? Jesus responds by teaching the story of the Good Samaritan. A story that many of you know where there were two enemies. I'll try to sum it up quickly. Two enemies, two people who by the culture standards should have hated each other. And one of these enemies literally pours out into the other who is wounded and abandoned in the street. And the people who were supposed to respond, they walked by, they didn't. You know the story. But the enemy got down and said, let me serve you. Let me help you. Let me do what I can. Let me show you love in action. That's Jesus' response. Say, well, Rick, why are you telling us his response? Because the question was, good teacher, who is my neighbor? And it is so easy for me to love this guy right here. Not every day, but I love him every day. It's not easy every day. It is so easy for me to love those of you who are my good friends here at church, those of you who serve and encourage me and my family and support us and lift us up. It's so easy to do that. It's easy to love my parents. It's easy to love those people who are so close to me, right? But then Jesus presses this and he says, yes, but Rick, if you were a Jew, would you love a Samaritan? Rick, do you love the people who are not so close to you? Do you love people that are not easy to love? And that's where I just have to be honest and say, I need your help, Lord. I need your help. I need your help. The cool thing right now is that most of you in the church are very encouraging. You're thinking, oh, it's great that we have a pastor that loves us. And maybe wondering, I wonder if there's any people here in the church that maybe are a little bit harder for Rick to love. And I will just tell you, if you're asking that question, no, I'm teasing. Jesus instructs us all to not only love those for whom we have affection, but also to demonstrate love for those for whom we feel no affection, perhaps even contempt. Yes, love and in Luke chapter 6, verses 27 through 36, we'll sort of bounce a little bit here. We see that there's great instruction, there's good truth here. But to you who are willing to listen, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who hurt you. Bouncing down to 32. If you love only those who love you, why should you get credit for that? I mean, even the sinners love those who hurt them. And then Jesus elaborates on that a little bit. You know, hey, it's easy to love the people who are kind. It's easy to love the people who help you. It's easy to love the people. It's easy to do that. Why should you get credit for that? And then in verses 35 through 36, he says this. Love your enemies. Do good to them. Lend to them without expecting to be repaid. And then your reward from heaven will be very great, and you will truly be acting as children of the Most High. For he is kind to those who are unthankful and wicked. And you must be compassionate, just as your Father is compassionate. See, if we're honest with each other, that's a hard teaching, isn't it? Isn't it a hard teaching to say, I'm supposed to love in action the people who are hard for me to love? That I should be kind. I should be generous. I should be caring and concerned. I should act on their behalf. I should be forgiving and patient with them, long-suffering. Paul says it this way in 1 Corinthians 13. You know the wedding passage, the one that's read at almost every single wedding, and I'm not saying it's wrong to do that, but Paul writes it this way in verses 1 through 3. Paul says, if I could speak all the languages of the earth and of the angels, but didn't love others, I would only be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I had the gift of prophecy, and if I understood all of God's secret plans, and possessed all knowledge, and if I had such faith that I could move mountains, which, by the way, that's a pretty good list. That's a pretty good list. Like, you should hire that guy for a pastor. You should hire that guy. The guy who has the gift of prophecy and understands all of God's secret plans, possesses all knowledge, and has all faith, such that he can move a mountain. Paul says, but if I have all that and not love, I'd be nothing. If I gave everything I have to the poor and even sacrificed my body, I could boast about it. But if I didn't love others, I would have gained nothing. One of the things that you'll want to know about that particular passage is where Paul says, I would be nothing. The Greek translation of that word is nothing. I would be nothing. He doesn't say I would be a little bit less, I'd be a little bit lower, I'd be diminished slightly. Paul says, man, if I had all that, if I could prophesy, if I had faith that could move a mountain, if I knew all the knowledge that God has to share, if I could speak in other tongues and language, if I could do all of that without love, it would be worthless. I'd be nothing. And so this is further evidence to us that the highest of all the things God expects from us is love. Love God, love others. So I guess here's what this message really boils down to, because I don't think I've taught you anything new today. I think you all came in knowing that God expects for us to love others. But here's where it becomes practical. Here's where it becomes real for us. How do you and I see people? All people. Do we see them as God's children who He loves as dearly as He loves you and wants as dearly as He wants you? Do we value God's children enough to invest in them? To invest in them. See, that's a great phrase. Do we love God's children enough to invest in them? Because anybody who's ever made any sort of an investment, you know that with investment there's risk. It's not a guarantee. You don't know exactly how things are going to turn out. There is risk involved. And when you invest in a human being, there is risk. You may get hurt. You may get rejected. In the case of a loan, you may not get repaid. You know, there are a lot of things that can go wrong. A lot of things that can go wrong. But the investment is not, I'm just going to help. It's an investment. I'm going to pour into you in the hope that this is going to bear fruit. That there's going to be a payoff much greater. And by the way, the payoff is not going to be mine, brother. The payoff is going to be yours. I'm going to love you and pour into you and serve you in such a way that you're going to see Christ in this. And that you're going to come to know Christ because I belong to Him. That's the investment that we make. So do we love people enough to invest in them? I'll give you an illustration if I may. The reason I have Grant up here is because last week we had a bit of an issue. Grant, stand up for me, bud. Go put your helmet on. It'll be cooler that way. So Grant is 9 years old. He plays on the Mustang, Lennox Mustangs, Widget Whites. It's an 8 and a 9 year old team. They're the Widget Whites. That's the level that he plays for. And I get to be his coach. Last year and this year I'm his coach. And Grant is our quarterback. And that's an important position. If you know much about football, it's an important position because the quarterback has to lead the team. And Grant has actually done very, very well this year. He's having a very good season. And he's not perfect. He makes a few mistakes here and there. But overall, he's played very, very well. Last week, however, we played a game at Oak Forest. And before the game started, I could see a look in Grant's eyes. It was a look of fear. It was a look of anxiety. It was a look of, I can't do this. And I didn't understand because it's not our first game. We've had 4 or 5 games this season. And, it got to the point where Grant began to throw up. He was throwing up. And, you know, it was evident to me that he was not going to be able to play in the game. I understood that. And we have a backup quarterback. The backup quarterback is not as experienced as Grant. He doesn't get as much practice as Grant. So it's kind of a big blow to the team. At a point in the season, by the way, where we really needed to win a game. And so as Grant was just getting sicker, and he was trying to push through it. He was like, okay, Dad, I think I can do it. I think I can do it, Dad. And so he came out to the field, he put his uniform on, we got out to the practice, and he's throwing up again. And he's, Dad, I'll try to do it. And by this point, I'm just angry because I'm the coach. And I got a team. And the team is counting on Grant. And quite frankly, I'm counting on him. I want my son to excel. I want to be that proud dad out there. And so while Grant was throwing up and really dealing with his feelings, I did what any good dad would do. I said, listen, are you playing or are you not playing? Because I got to make a decision here. Is it you or Langford? Who's it going to be? And Grant kind of looked at me, and his face and his eyes said, Dad, I so want to make you proud. I want to fight through this and play. But his body went, bleh. And so I told him, I said, hey, just go sit with your mother. Go. You can take it out. Just go sit with your mother. I got to go and get our team ready. And I kind of went on. Now, because I like to encourage and compel people, maybe it's the pastor in me, I did swing by Grant a couple of times before the game started, and I said things like, you know we're probably going to lose today, right? And then I swung by again and I said, you know this is all in your head, right? You know you're not really sick. It's all in your head. This is game 5. You played 4 games. This team's not even tough. Yeah. That's what I did. And, oh boy. See, I forgot who I was. I was being a coach. I'm sorry, church. I know I do this a lot, but
not as much as me.
See, I was being a coach, and I wasn't being a dad. And my priorities were just all mixed up. They were all whacked out of order. And I don't think it's any secret that I'm preaching this sermon today about loving people. Because I think that all of us may fall into that trap sometimes. On that particular day, I was a coach who had a football player, not a dad who had a son. And I don't know if ever maybe you've been at work and you've been a manager who had an employee. Or maybe you've been a teacher who had a student. Or maybe you've been a salesman who had a client, a customer. And what I'm saying today, church, is we have to remember that these are not just clients or customers or players or students or employees. These are human beings who have hearts and souls. And that was disgusting because not only is that my son, but he's God's child. God's child. And I allowed worldly things to get in the way of what is really important. And so after the game, I decided on the ride home as I looked in the mirror and I saw my broken son sitting in the back of the car. And I was still dealing with some anger over the game. We didn't play well. I didn't coach well. All that kind of stuff. And I was still trying to figure out, how do I help? What do I do? I'm not good. I don't know what to do with if he's nervous before a game. Like I've never felt. I don't know what to do with that. So some of it was my own failure. But on the way home, I just decided, you know what? I got to turn football off. Because as I looked in the mirror, I saw a boy, a human being who had a heart and a soul and a future. Somebody that I knew I had to pour into. And so typically when we get home, we would sit and watch football games throughout the day. And I would say, oh, did you see how they did that? And we'd rewind it, and oh, look at that, that was great. But this day I said, you know, we're not watching football. We're just going to turn football off. Football's not going to be a part of our life today. And I finally pulled Grant in, and I said, hey, listen, buddy, I need to talk to you. So I pulled him over, and he sat on my knee on the couch. And I said, I need you to understand something. You're my son, who I could never love more, and I could never love less. You're my son. And there are days when I'm maybe more proud of your accomplishments, your achievements, your behavior. And there are other days when maybe I'm a little bit disappointed with your accomplishments, your achievements, your behavior. But in the end, I'm always proud. I'm always proud to walk in with you on my side. Because you're my boy, and I love you. And so we needed to work that out. And I hope that's a good illustration today of, can I see others that same way? That man, you're not just a drummer. You're not just a drummer. You're God's son, who's every bit as valuable as I am to God. And I ought to treat you that way. No, you're not just kids in our youth group. You're not just available to watch the little ones when we have leadership meetings. You guys are God's daughters and sons who matter. You have souls, and you're important. And can I treat people like that? The girl at the cash register at Burkott's. You know, the couple that you see when you're handing out flyers. And so, to finish the sermon today by just telling you, hey, we should love people, we should see people differently, is still a little bit difficult. Probably tough to say, well, what do I do with that? What do I do with it? So, Janine's going to kill me for all the sniffling when I get home. But here's what I think we should wrestle with. Can you turn to Galatians chapter 5? Galatians chapter 5, verses 13 and 14. Fortunately, when I have questions, the Bible answers them. I got to search, I got to look, I got to work at it, but the Holy Spirit reveals answers to me, reveals truth to me, and not because I'm special, but because God promises that to all of us. That if we have questions and we will seek Him, boy, He will show up and reveal the truth to us. And so my question is, Lord, I want to love people that way. I want to love people the way you're talking about, Lord. But how do I do it? And so in Galatians chapter 5, verses 13 through 14, Paul writes this. He says, for you were called to freedom, brothers, and do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And so Paul really explains for us what I said when it's not that warm feeling. It's not that emotional kind of love. Paul says this. He says, but through love, serve one another. And this is I think this is the ESV today. I usually read from NLT. But through love, serve one another. So what does love look like? Love looks like we serve one another. We serve one another. I stole this from the Village Church. They define serving this way in their doctrinal statement. They say that we the church, we deliberately look for needs around our church family of all sorts, and we find ways to meet them through loving deeds, seeking as little recognition as possible. Let me read that one more time. I think that's a great definition of serving. We deliberately look for needs around our church family and of all sorts, and we find ways to meet them through loving deeds, seeking as little recognition as possible. And so just in case you would leave today and you would wonder, well, how do I serve? What can I do to serve? There are countless ways that you can serve, and it's not just serving this church. It's serving your neighbor, whether he is a believer or not. Because while some of these passages talk specifically about Christians with Christians, Jesus blew that up when he said, love your neighbor. Amen? Can we agree on that? Jesus says it's bigger than that. It goes beyond that. It's not just Christian to Christian. It's about even loving your enemies. Because let's face it, who needs to see the love of Christ? Lost people. It ain't just Christians and Christians. It's got to be for lost people. Yes, they will look at the church and know that we belong to Christ by how we love one another, but we also have to love them. And so we look for the needs of people. And then we find ways to meet them through loving deeds, seeking as little recognition as possible. So a couple ways you can do that here at the church. I can tell you right now, our kids' ministries need people. They need people. And it's really hard because I went through my mind this week and I was thinking, like, who can I ask? Who can I just walk up to and invite into kids' ministries? Are you nervous? You think you're about to get tapped? You're not. And here's the reason why. The reason you're not going to get tapped on the shoulder right now is because so many of you are already doing other things. We've got people on the worship team. We've got people that run all of our audio-visual stuff. We've got people on our connection team and our hospitality team. And we've got people who are prayer partners. And we've got people that are teaching our elementary classes. People that are teaching in our preschool and working in the nursery. We've got people that are working with youth group. And I probably didn't count them all. We've got people that are doing building maintenance and such. And I know there are other ministries that I missed. But people are already contributing and serving in so many ways. But the fact remains, we have a need. We need people who are willing to pitch in and help with our kids, and most specifically in our nursery. So if you're somebody who says, I don't know, I'm not much of a teacher, you don't have to be. We need help in our nursery. We need people who can chip in and say, you know what, I'll do that. I can do like one out of every 5 or 6 Sundays. I can go down there and serve in that way. Okay, so that would be one way. There's another way. I was talking to our leadership last week about how Grace Fellowship Church, we need to take that next step and put faith in action. That's what we need. We need to start finding ways that we can serve and help others. And we've done that occasionally, but we're not very good at it. And you know why we're not very good at it? Because I'm not good at it. I'm not very good at finding those ways. And so I'm looking for people who say, you know what? My mind works that way. My heart beats for causes and people who are hurting. And I'm inviting people into a ministry that I think we'll call it Faith in Action. Okay, I don't know if that's the name, but I like it right now. Faith in Action, where we will find tangible ways to go out and serve our community. And maybe the world too, but let's start with our community. Let's start with our neighbors. Let's find out what they need. And then let's pour into them and meet those needs to the very best of our ability, seeking as little recognition as possible, that they might know the love of Christ. We have prayer partners, and there are folks who maybe want to join in with that ministry and just be a part of a team that would agree to pray for others. Pray for others. Worship team, come on up here. Here's a simple one.